Ciryl Gane versus Francis Ngannou is going to take place at UFC 270 on January the 22nd, just 3 months away from now. I'll be breaking down what I saw when I rewatched their most recent fights, and I'll be making a prediction as to who I think will win on January the 22nd. Let's get into it. First of all, there are some obvious differences between Ciryl Gane and Francis Ngannou. Francis is the older fighter, Ciryl is the younger fighter. Now, does that give Ciryl an edge? Generally, the younger fighter is considered to have an advantage. But would Francis be said to have more experience? Francis has 19 professional MMA fights versus just 10 for Ciryl. Ciryl has also never tasted defeat. He's completely undefeated. He has a record of 10-0 in professional MMA versus Francis Ngannou, who has a record of 16-3. When you have a loss in professional combat sports, that forces you to look inwards and to reflect on yourself and to ask yourself, where did I go wrong? What do I need to improve upon? And what can I do to become a better version of myself the next time I step into the octagon? Ciryl has never had to do that process because he's never had a loss. Now, could that mean that Ciryl is just always better prepared, and Ciryl has done such a phenomenal job at such a high level to prepare himself for his professional MMA career that he never faces a loss? I think it is the latter. When you break down how Ciryl performs and how Ciryl trains for every single opponent, he watches film, he watches tape, he knows exactly how to train his body, what weight to come in at, what his fight plan is going to be. He always seems to know what he is doing. And by the way, Francis spent a lot of time in France. If you've watched the Joe Rogan podcast episode with Francis Ngannou, you'll know that Francis spent many number of years, especially that's where he got his start in professional MMA in France. And it just so happens, coincidentally, Ciryl is from France. So I thought that was an interesting coincidence as well. But getting back to it, Ciryl is younger, Ciryl is undefeated, but Francis has the reach advantage and the weight advantage. If you've seen pictures of Francis's physique, this guy looks like the Incredible Hulk. He looks like he's someone straight out of a Marvel movie, and he looks like a superhero. He is ripped, he is shredded, and he is bulky. He's got a lot of muscle mass. And he has a reach advantage. He has a 2-inch reach advantage. He's got a reach of 83 inches versus 81 inches for Ciryl Gane. So I think reach and weight are going to be advantages Francis. But age and technique and preparation, that's advantage Ciryl Gane. I think Ciryl Gane has a much better defense than Francis. And it's almost across the board in sports. The person or the team with better defense tends to win versus a person who is known for their offensive firepower. Case in point, Ciryl Gane just recently beat Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, phenomenal fighter, incredible knockout power. He can put you to sleep like that with just one punch. And Francis has very similar punching power to Derek Lewis, if not more than Derek Lewis. So Ciryl has already fought someone who has a lot of the same threats as Francis Ngannou. In fact, that was his last fight. That was his most recent fight. So that memory, that muscle memory, is fresh in Ciryl Gane's mind. And don't forget, Ciryl Gane and Francis Ngannou, they train together. They've trained together in the past. They've spent a lot of time with each other in the gym. So Ciryl knows exactly when Francis unloads on his power. Now you could say, oh, well, wait a minute. Why doesn't that apply to Francis as well? Because Francis will know all the tricks that Ciryl has. It doesn't quite work the same way when the guy is so technically gifted like Ciryl Gane is. When you're technically gifted, you have so many weapons in your arsenal. You have so many tricks up your sleeve. It's hard to be predictable. As opposed to a guy like Francis Ngannou, who relies on that knockout power, those hard-hitting combinations. Those people are a lot more predictable. And when you spend time training with them, especially in the gym, you can start to figure them out. And you can start to understand their timing. And you can start to predict what they're going to do next. Ciryl Gane versus Francis Ngannou is a lot like Ciryl Gane versus Derek Lewis. Of course, Francis Ngannou is much faster, much more athletic than Derek Lewis. But there is a parallel. Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane is also like Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman. We all know how that fight turned out. Rumble in the Jungle, Kinshasa, Zaire, in the early 70s. Everybody predicted George Foreman to win because he had phenomenal, intense knockout power. He was the hardest puncher boxing had seen up until that point. So everybody was picking George Foreman, especially because George Foreman was the younger fighter. Here, the knockout power is with the older fighter. And even when the knockout power was with the younger fighter back when Muhammad Ali fought George Foreman, Muhammad Ali ended up knocking out George Foreman. So technique and defensive technique always seems to beat offensive firepower. It's almost unanimous across the board, no matter what sport or what combat sport you're looking at. Ciryl Gane versus Francis Ngannou also reminds me a lot of Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. Those two just completed their phenomenal trilogy. That trilogy was just explosive, fireworks from the first fight to the end of the third fight. The second fight was a lot one way. It was all Tyson Fury dominating. But the first and the third fights were some of the best heavyweight boxing fights boxing has ever seen. And again, Deontay Wilder was the knockout power. Tyson Fury was the technique. And what ended up happening? Tyson Fury drew the first one. A lot of people argue that Tyson Fury should have won the first one. But anyways, the official result is he drew the first one. He dominated Deontay in the second one, and he knocked out Deontay Wilder in the third one. So this again proves my hypothesis that across the sports, technique, and especially defensive technique, seems to always beat out offensive firepower. In the age-old adage of who is going to win when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, the immovable object always seems to win. I'm predicting Ciryl Gane to win against Francis Ngannou on January the 22nd at UFC 270. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.